Welcome to They Are Waiting for Us from Forbes Books, the podcast that explores how education can transform lives and communities, featuring conversations with change agents who are making a difference in education, from parents and advocates to teachers and leaders. Here's Dr. Lisa Andrew.
My guest this week is Taylor Shead, the CEO and founder of Stemuli. Under Taylor's leadership, Stemuli Studios is transforming education as we know it. The goal of her innovative 3D immersive game-based learning platform is to make school as engaging as a video game. While Taylor is widely recognized as a visionary entrepreneur, her passion for empowering youth runs just as deep. Over the past decade, she has dedicated herself to preparing students furthest from access and opportunity for the workforce of tomorrow. She is an inspiration not only for her business accomplishments, but also for her commitment to building an inclusive future. Taylor, welcome to They Are Waiting for Us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So I'm just very, very curious. So who is Taylor Shead? Can you give us a brief summary of your educational and professional journey and how it influences your work today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who is Taylor Shead? What a big question. It's still being defined. So as far as who I am the story of the founder that dropped out of college because the opportunity to change the world and use technology to transform education was too great. But let's talk about why I dropped out and why it inspired me to get in towards my life mission. And the reason why is I was the youngest of 7 children to all earn a Division I basketball or football scholarship to play.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And, so being the baby, I was a legacy holder, if you will. And it wasn't until I was in college chemistry class that I recognized I did not have the math skills I would need to persist with my degree in pre-medicine. So at that time, I ended up losing my scholarship and I had a decision to make. Was I going to go and try to play basketball somewhere else? But ultimately what I decided to spend the rest of my life doing is focusing on making sure the next generation doesn't encounter the same challenge that I did. You set a goal, but you don't have the skills to obtain your goal.
Yeah, fair. That's great. That's great. I always love success stories of pathways that had some college in it, took a left, took a right, went straight forward. Gee, what is the opportunity? And then just grabbed on and went forward. I think that message is super, super powerful to our youth today, especially when they're just hearing from folks. It's college, 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 or nothing. So thank you for being a model and sharing that piece. Definitely will be connecting students who are looking at different pathways to you just for that.
So I was thinking about my journey as a founder, and because I was an athlete, oftentimes what we talk about in our community is that only 1% of high school athletes ever make it into college, and only 1% of those athletes ever make it professional. And so recently I started reflecting on my entrepreneurship journey and thinking about the access to venture capital or the lack thereof for Black and female founders, especially in the education space. And what dawned on me is that, when Stemuli reached a goal of raising over $1 million in capital and I became the 94th Black woman in the history of the world to do that, we're essentially like professional athletes. It's like the 1% of the 1%, a random point, but just wanted to bring that up. There's a lot of comparisons to the rarity of actually even making it here.
Yeah, for sure. So on that, let's get a little bit more business-y. And as you mentioned, in 2022, you became one of the very few Black women in history to raise over $1 million in venture capital. So I'm curious, can you tell us more about that incredible accomplishment?
Yeah. So to take a step back, it's like, how did you accomplish that? That's the question I get a lot. And at that time, I'll run over just a couple of things that Stemuli had done. So throughout the pandemic, we worked alongside the second largest school district in Texas, Dallas Independent School District, about 150,000 students, majority are minorities. And majority are low income or Title I, as they say in the education field. And with that said, the school district really leaned into Stemuli as a small business that could innovate. And they said, we want to do something that no one else in the entire world is doing. We want to build school in a video game. And the reason they wanted to do that is because they felt like we can do more for our kids than sit them in front of Zoom or have them in these classrooms where they're so bored that they're not getting great grades, they're not engaged, they're not having fun. And so we spent about 9 months building the first version of our platform, which was school in a video game, where kids were going to school from home 3 days a week on our platform and then 2 days in person. And you want to know what school in a video game looks like? It means you have your own personalized avatar that's your skin color, that has your favorite hat on, your favorite hoodie. You're running around in an environment where you can socialize with your friends. They can actually hear you, or you can type to them. And then the moment you're supposed to be in the classroom, a teacher can hit a button and it'll pull you from anywhere you are in this video game environment and then drop you into a 3D classroom where the teacher is in control and the student feels like they're driving the experience, even though the teacher's in control, which is the way we think education should work today. So I share all of that because the milestone that we reached in order to raise venture capital is we were able to launch the country's first educational metaverse in August of 2021. 30 days later, Facebook changed their name to Meta. Mic drop moment there. So around the world,
Wow.
people wanted to understand what an educational metaverse was. They would Google it or YouTube it, and then they would stumble upon Stemuli. And the fact that we had already built a product was transformative. But that's not where the work stopped. After we launched that platform, what we saw in the data is teachers were saying, we have never had kids asking us to do more homework assignments in order to get points to upgrade their avatars. Teachers and students were like, we want more gameplay in the world. And parents said, we love that our kids are learning through this game. Can you produce some data for us so we can actually see what they're learning? So all of that coming together is what attracted the venture capital world to us. It was the fact that we were the first movers in the space. But one thing I want to point out is we don't just have any venture capitalists backing us. Our lead investor was Slauson & Company. And in their portfolio, they have companies like the sound engineer that helped develop Kendrick Lamar's in their portfolio, doing some cool stuff for the audio industry. You have the former head of Yeezy Innovation Lab, who's 3D printing shoes faster than anybody's ever done and then shipping it across the world. So we feel very accomplished, one, to be a part of such an amazing portfolio, but two, to be able to set the example for the next generation that to young girls and young boys and diverse people everywhere, that you too can build products that the world needs and loves.
That's great. It's a great story. And I think the level of what you already had baked, you still, needed ingredients, you still wanted to expand, but the level of what you had baked that attracted the venture capitalists, and that, as you pointed out, their portfolio being so diverse that they saw potential in those really powerful ways, not just, hey, this is ed tech, right? Which is so much, I think, people who are doing a lot around ed tech or doing a lot in education, they're very limiting as to what kind of folk to interact with. I know we recently just did a short documentary with some very well-known folks in the Hollywood industry. Their names meant nothing to me when I met them. I'm like, okay, so you must know really well what you do. I don't know that. I'm going to take a chance on this because this is something that is not in my hemisphere, but I bet you're a good bet, a good partner. So it sounds like that's the same kind of experience that you had. And that takes being very open-minded, and it takes a lot of trust, in going along with folks like that. And you've had a lot of autonomy?
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So what is amazing about what you said is Stemuli was actually outside of this venture capital firm's thesis. And so the venture capital firm, again, Slauson & Company, they're based in Los Angeles. What they're about is investing in small and medium businesses that are developing technology to support other small and medium businesses. They're also investing in consumer technology. But what's notable about them is Slauson Avenue goes from the poorest Black zip code in Los Angeles to one of the wealthiest Black zip codes in the entire United States. It has something like the most Black millionaires in that area. And so their thesis is investing in companies that are doing that exact same thing, moving people from the lowest end of the spectrum to the highest end of the spectrum. So when we're in a conversation, they said, hey, we don't typically invest in enterprise or education. I said, how in the world are you going to do economic inclusion if you're not investing in education?
Thank you. Yeah, it's so short-sighted. Absolutely homelessness, absolutely healthcare, absolutely mental health. Let's go all the way back to the roots Let's go all the way back to the root cause, and it lands right in education, economic mobility, being able to, and the unothering of folks so that we can truly move forward, if you want to move forward, right? So, wow. Love the educational journey, love the professional journey. So how do you define success for yourself?
I love this question so much. Sometimes people see like me on the covers of magazines or on news or on these panels and like you're successful. And to be honest, what success means to me and to Stemuli is that we've created the most inclusive, personalized learning platform on the planet that happens to be delivered through a video game. But that's not success by itself, because you can develop products and that doesn't mean you're successful. We are successful when our platform is helping get kids jobs. We're successful when we're reaching millions of learners. And we're successful when we deliver to the market the first lifelong learning application that all of us use from the time that we're in middle school throughout our entire lifetimes. If you look at the market right now, there's applications like Uber and Netflix and Prime and Google Maps that we engage in almost on a daily basis. You think of hardware like our iPhones, we engage in, and we've been buying every single time they come out with a new product. There's not a product that we're engaging in that we stay with and we utilize and we're dependent on the same way we are with these consumer apps. So to me, success is when we are changing the narrative and the culture around what diverse learners are able to accomplish in their lives, but also and how we all believe that we can continue to progress and just grow and upskill through our education.
So based on what you just said, do you think how you define your success has changed, like since you decided to move out of college to move into something else?
Number one, I just love these questions. So my definition of success has changed, and I'll point out 2 to 3 really quick ways. When I lost my scholarship, first success meant when people look back at Taylor Shead, they don't remember that she lost her scholarship. They remember something much bigger that she did. And so the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey was really like a journey of like proving to myself and to the world that I wasn't a failure. The next version of success was all about like millions of students, millions of jobs obtained, and impact. And again, it's still really there. But the difference now is that I see all the little milestones on our journey as recipes to success. And so I don't discount the fact of when I am on the cover of D magazine, recognized as one of the top 50 CEOs in the entire region, that yeah, it's like, it's not impacting students' lives, but if I am inspiring one young woman, one minority, one anybody, honestly, it doesn't matter who you are, then that's what I was put on this earth to do, is to inspire and help you reach your own dreams. The impact we're having on the next generation, one thing that's very intentional about our organization is we like to show up as we are. I know the audience can't see me, but I have pearls on. I have pink lipstick. I have a camel colored hat and a very brightly colored outfit, green, gold, and blue. As far as the impact on the next generation, like you hear a lot of speakers talk about, you can't be what you can't see. And so we're extremely intentional about being seen for who we are, you know, in our diversity and our culture. But above that, you know, going back to the lack of access to capital that organizations like myself and Stemuli has, is you have to use every competitive advantage that you can. You know, with our founding team, we're like, we're going to color coordinate in the color of our logo and let people see that there's not another technology company that's run by leaders that look like us. And when you talk about grabbing the next generation, you know, we're taking up some mind share as far as like what's possible and who we are. And so we just really lean into that even more, because that's another resource that we have that we don't have to pay for. It's just leaning into who we are.
Exactly. I love it. So what's the best advice you've ever received in your career?
all the great questions. What's interesting about that question is the advice is only as good as the stage that you're in, right? And so some of the most memorable pieces of advice that I got earlier in my career, it might be totally different as far as what I would say the best advice I've received in current day. But going back to the early days, one of my first investors in my first company is a guy by the name of Greg Bestick. He was the former president of the Learning Company, which invented Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and Rita Rabbit. So this is the guy, right? He invested in me. He found me. I don't know how that happened. But one thing he told me is like, Taylor, if you want to get additional investment capital, you need to actually go prove that you can sell into school districts because the procurement processes are crazy, but go prove to us that you can actually do that. And so imagine being told that at 20, and I'm 34 now. So I've literally spent 14 years where anytime investors or other people talk to me and like, hey, do you know this industry is really hard to work with? Like, yeah, that's small potatoes. I figured that out 14 years ago. And through working and selling into school districts, you start developing relationships. And so the products that we develop at Stemuli are not based upon what we perceive the problem to be. Our solutions are based upon what we have learned through service to these school districts. So I think it's just really important not to assume you know the problem, like get as close to it as possible and stay current. But then two, go figure out if you can sell a product before you get into business.
Right. As a former principal and assistant superintendent, I always gave huge street cred to people who would come in and say, what are you currently dealing with? Listening to what my current struggles were, my pain points, and like, okay, let's talk about how we might be able to create a solution. Sometimes it wasn't even that person's product, but they truly were trying to understand what was happening, because that's also information for them to take back. Like, well, what we currently have right now isn't a solution to the last 5 people I've talked to. So, maybe we should do this or that. Or many times then they were able to completely match where I was struggling or students were struggling and be able to provide something for me. So, yeah.
To that point, if you think about what I just said, that we started our business based upon service and developing relationships and learning. And then fast forward, maybe 6 years after I had been in the industry or 10 years after I've been in the industry, one of the most important phone calls I ever received was from that chief technology officer of Dallas ISD saying, let's build school in a video game. He wouldn't have called me if he didn't know me. He hadn't got to know my heart and my passion for this work. So it's a full circle.
You never know. You never know. It's just like, it may be no for now, but we keep everything in here. So working to create opportunities for economic mobility. We talked a little bit about that in the opening. So that's a common thread in both of our fabrics. Your testimony to the Texas Commission on Public School Finance. I watched that. Very compelling. I loved you asked them to provide for all, not just some. I mean, that really, really resonated with me. So what do you think is the most challenging aspect of this work for you?
Well, I just got chills thinking about, that was the first time I had ever spoken in a public forum, and I'm glad that
you showed up authentically. You spoke your truth. You had them sit in discomfort. You were there. You were open. I thought it was just brilliant. So all of that worked in your favor, according to me.
I think the most challenging aspect of this work for me is you always want to be further than you are, but you're always right on time with where you're supposed to be. And so really sitting and resting in that and understanding that this innovation, this change, this disruption is going to emerge and come about at the right time with the right people at the right place. And so it's that tension between when are you relying on like patience and faith, and then when are you like hitting the ground running and doing everything you can to make it happen. And what ends up happening is you hit the ground running, you're working as hard as you possibly can, and there gets to a point where there's nothing more that you as an individual or as a company can do. And you do then have to rely on like, I'm a faithful person, but like I rely on faith, and you have to kind of rely on the universe and like luck and timing, if you will, to know that all of it's going to come together. But you never have all of the answers, but you do have like intuition and gut instinct. So overall, the most challenging part is like wanting to make the impact, but then having to really give it over to like God and the world and say like, hey, I need you to do your part and help me make this happen too.
Do you have a high sense of urgency? Is that part of your leadership profile?
Yes. The Insights Discovery personality assessment. It's so funny that you bring that up. My team was like recently kidding with me like, Taylor, when you talk, there's urgency in your voice and everything you say. But I do have a sense of urgency, and really the urgency is like my community is being left behind. Every kid that goes to the next grade level that might be passed through that really didn't have the skills that they need, or every kid that's sitting in our schools and they have no connection to what's possible and jobs for the future, and they have no direction and they have no inspiration.
Yeah.
And they're being told, immigrant families often talk about like you could be a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. We have families here in America that because they can only be what they see, they're not even inspiring their kids to get into some of these high wage, high demand jobs. So is there urgency? Absolutely. I'm afraid of my community falling behind. But now the national statistics show that all of us should feel a great sense of urgency because we do not have the workforce pipeline that we need in order to stay competitive. And that's something I've been thinking about for 10 to 15 years. And it's amazing to see the amount of federal dollars and state dollars that are now being spent in this space, because this is the nation's number one problem. And I would argue that it's the world's number one problem. It's a multi-trillion-dollar problem that we're trying to solve in the coolest way possible.
Right. The workforce development. We often, our greatest hope is that the students of Silicon Valley can become the workforce of Silicon Valley. And when you look at the demographic of the students of Silicon Valley, they're the demographic that is not being served. They're not being resourced. So you're resourcing just a small fraction of our valley. So there's no way the other part of the valley can even compete, get an internship, interview, and you know this, tech, this legislators, this educators. So if we don't change something and do something about it, you must condone it, right? You must say, oh, then it's okay.
I love that you said that. That's absolutely right. Every time you make a pass on how you can help, how you can invest, we have to realize that we are complicit. That's a good word. We're complicit.
It's on our left.
Yeah, in the state of where we are.
Yeah. Well, we've covered the Taylor Shead story. And next I want to get into the story of Stemuli, but we have to stop here. Also coming up in the second part of my talk with Taylor Shead, the CEO and founder of Stemuli, we'll discuss her response to those who might criticize her educational gaming company by saying kids already spend too much time staring at a screen.
If they're going to be engaging in these technologies, wouldn't we much prefer that they're learning while they're engaging in these technologies? And through our data dashboards, I can show you everything that they're learning as they spend time in the platform.
This has been They Are Waiting for Us. If you want to learn how to create economic opportunity through equal access to quality education and create an extraordinary learning environment focused on everyone realizing their full potential, go to drlisaandrew.com. They Are Waiting for Us is a production of Forbes Books.